get me an appointment so I can go down and visit Ellen. We got it all set up, and his life went. So when I heard she was here today, Rachel called, tried to get in touch with me. So when I heard she was here, Sterling, she's here. We got to get over there.
Yeah.
His wife's been in the hospital with cancer,
Oh,
the kind that's
no.
supposed to take your life in 2 months.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to, but she went on all the different things, and she's been through hell, but
Yeah.
they're rebuilding her body from all the things the chemo killed.
Uh-huh.
But they're together still.
Yeah, that chemo, that's...
To me, it's so stupid. I said, they say they're going to give you a quality of life for a little longer, but when they did that for Bill,
Yeah.
Bill said that is not
Worse.
quality,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
hell.
Yep.
We'll give you a longer time, but you live in a lot more hell.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so sorry he went through it. I feel bad for him too, but oh my goodness, how interesting all this stuff you're doing. He bought that when he started into all this stuff. I'm going to learn about the Bronsons.
Oh, Mom, you don't even know how much more money I have.
He just started, and you know what that does to me? Yes, somebody finally cares about life and genealogy and ancestors. I'm just so thankful.
Oh.
It's going to tip it over.
I'll hold it if you want me to. I'm not going anywhere.
Needed to stay put.
And we can get the neighbors and all their sound.
Test 1, 2. All right, and Helen, will you talk?
Will I talk? About what?
Anything you want.
Just that. I just want to do it.
We want to make sure he can hear you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad she could still talk. I keep, I wonder, like Aunt Charlotte down there in Mexico. She doesn't the slightest, what's it been, over a year? She has no idea who's who, and
Yeah.
talking and remembering, and so many of our relatives. So
Yeah.
Test 1, 2. All right, and Helen, will you talk?
Will I talk?
Oh, beautiful.
Okay, it's Ellen, not Helen.
Ellen.
Yes.
Yes. Does it sound like I'm saying Helen?
Yes.
Oh, Aunt Ellen. I need to enunciate more.
What'd you drop?
I dropped my mic receiver.
Oh. Sounds
Yeah.
like there's a waterfall somewhere.
They got the sprinkler right
Right.
over there.
What's over there? It sounds,
Just their cooler.
oh, the air conditioner.
Yeah,
probably.
Air conditioners running.
Just ask me questions.
So, you are Grandpa Claude and Grandma Thelma's.
Thelma's.
And Grandpa's other wife was, what was Grandpa Claude's other?
Ruth.
Ruth.
Yes. Ruth.
Yes.
Okay.
Granny Ruth.
Granny
Yep.
Ruth.
And she was the one that lived in Fillmore?
Yep.
Okay.
At the end.
Towards the end, yep.
Yeah.
And her family did the pottery stuff, is that correct?
Yeah, her daughter,
Her
well,
daughter.
Marilyn.
Okay.
Oh,
Marilyn did the pottery as a daughter of Ruth.
Okay. I just remember, I have vague memories, probably Riley's age, of going back out there to Fillmore and seeing the pottery stores and stuff like that. Okay, so
My face
Where-
done yet?
I know that my dad was born in Tabiona.
yeah.
Where were you born?
I was born in Midway.
In Midway. Okay. So,
Yeah.
can you tell me a little bit of your memory of the storyline from how was Dad born in Midway, or sorry, Tabiona, you were born in Midway? Because my whole knowledge of the Bronsons, they kind of founded Midway and kind of started all that.
Well, Dad did a lot of sheep herding,
Oh,
and that's what he was doing at Havona. And then he was there for a while, and then he moved back to Midway, and I was born there.
Okay. So yeah, I did not know until doing all my research stuff that Midway was originally Fort Midway,
Yeah.
and when I think it was Edwin Bronson, when his family, they had come from Michigan and settled here in Utah, when they had settled Midway, when I was reading the history books there was what they called the Upper Provo and the Lower Provo,
Yeah,
which the
the
Upper Provo
Snake-
was all
the
this,
Snake River.
yeah, and then this was the Lower Provo, and then
Uh-huh.
Brigham Young called them to build a fort to protect from the Indians, and that was Fort Midway, but midway between the two communities, and so.
Oh, that's why it was called Midway.
And that's why it was called Midway. And so they lived in the fort for, I think it was 2 years. They'd let the cattle out at night during the day, and they could go out and work on the farms. But then at night, they'd have to bring everybody back inside the fort because of the Indians. Very cool. Okay, so let's go back to your dad. You said he was did sheep herding a lot. I thought I read somewhere that he was an engineer and helped with Geneva Steel. Is that
Well, that was after.
that was later in life though,
Later
correct?
in
Yeah, but
life.
is that correct that he did work for
after,
Geneva?
He married Duke.
Okay.
Why he,
Well, from Midway, did he go up to Idaho? Isn't that where he found
Yes.
Ruth?
When I was 2, we went to Idaho, and we was there till, well, Tom was born, and then the baby bomb lost,
Oh,
Come on.
and he married Ruth. They got a divorce, and he married Ruth. And then after that, we moved to Midway, and he moved to Salt Lake. And then from Salt Lake, he went to Pleasant Grove and worked at the steel plant.
I just a couple months ago I joined the American Legion Post 19 here in Lehigh. And our post commander was telling us stories, and I learned too that Camp Williams was originally started during World War II to
Yeah.
protect Geneva Steel, to watch out and protect Geneva Steel, because Geneva Steel was the only inland steel manufacturing company in the country, and so to protect all the steel for the war, because they were worried if the Japanese made stateside that Geneva Steel was a target, and so they founded Camp Williams as a military outpost to watch over and be a lookout for Geneva Steel. So I thought that was pretty interesting. So, okay, what kind of stories can you remember or share about my dad as he was growing up? Do you know how long he lived in Tabiona before he left?
Well,
After he was born, I mean?
not very long, because somewhere between the 2 years when I was born and he was born. Why? They moved back to Midway.
Okay.
And
So he was born in Tabby but didn't live there long. He was
No.
mostly raised in Midway,
they-
correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we were there till I turned 2. And then we went to
Mom, look,
Idaho, and he herded sheep up on they called it Lookout
Okay.
Mountain. That's around Haley somewhere. I don't know exactly, but Mom used to have a picture, but you know, pictures all burned of the house, and the hill goes straight up, practically on both sides, and the little house is about halfway up where we live, and then Dad herded sheep and took care of them.
Do you remember from Dad's stories that he told me, he dropped out of school in the 8th grade
Yeah.
and went to work basically
Well,
running machinery, building roads.
when he was to go into the 7th grade, which there in Midway, the 7th grade was still grade school.
Okay.
But Dad told him that if he'd go live with him in Pleasant Grove, he could take shop. He wanted to take shop and wood carpentry and stuff that way. And so he moved down there. Well, before the year was out, he moved to Idaho again and put your dad on a
Construct.
big construction job, and that's where he was at till
The rest of his life.
Well,
most
until
of the
he-
rest of his life, till he ended up at that.
All right, so Mom, at what point in all of this story do you come in? Well, do you and Fern come in? So,
Oh, long,
okay, hold on, let's back up.
Yeah, a long ways.
Okay, so let's back up still. Do you remember at what age he was when he joined the Air Force?
He was drafted. He didn't
He was
join.
drafted?
No,
Well,
he was gonna be drafted,
Yeah.
so he
Yeah.
went and joined the Air Force as a mechanic, so he wouldn't have to fight.
That was my understanding. He was going to be drafted. He didn't want to get drafted and be put into a job he didn't want, so he
That was-
enlisted and picked
Mexican, went
picked
to
a job.
Mexico.
That's
to
one of
get
the
out of
reasons we went to Mexico, was so that Bill wouldn't have to go into the service.
Okay.
Wouldn't have to draft. But,
So he would have been about 20 then.
huh?
He would have been about 20 then.
I think he was.
If you were 18.
And that would have
Well,
been-
I was 17.
17, so 19.
He was, what, 2 years
Yeah,
older?
so 19 or 20.
19 or 20, so about the same age I was when I joined then. Okay, and so at that time, that would have been what war? That was that
What war?
Korea?
No, it was just before Korea.
Korea or
Yeah,
Vietnam?
it had been Korea,
Korea.
the 50s. Yeah.
Yeah, this would have been the Korean War that he.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then he was only in about 2 years, from my understanding, and then or shorter than that or something, and then
In there very long. And then Dad got sick, and so they released him to take care of the family.
that's right. Okay. Okay. So then that would have been early 20s. So how old was he when you guys got married?
Well, that's when he met Fern.
He met Fern
At that time.
during the
when
service
he got
time.
back out of the service, because the polygamists, the big threat, they was going to put them all in jail. We went to Idaho, just disappeared, left our home, and the home was rented out, and Bill's family moved into that home, and they got acquainted with the Allreds.
Okay.
Of course, Bill already knew the Allreds because he was in the service, got acquainted with David Coons, and
So Dad met Dave Coons while he was in the military.
yeah,
Interesting.
No, before he went in.
Oh, before. Okay.
but they got to be good friends in there anyway. So
Okay.
when he came out, he hung around with Dave. And
Well, Dave was Aunt Rhea's
the son.
son, and Aunt Rhea is really Grandma Sylvia's cousin.
Is what?
She
Right,
was a
right.
cousin.
To
Yeah.
my grandma,
Right.
Martin's mom.
Okay. So then Fern and Dad were married for how long before he married you?
years.
6?
8.
8 years
Yep.
before you came into the picture?
Yep.
Oh, good Lord. Okay. So they were married for 8. Then you come into the picture. And then I'm the baby of that. So where were you and Dad living when you guys got married?
I was in the Red House at 3rd East, Murray,
So Murray, okay.
and your father was living with Fern in Duchesne.
Okay.
They moved out with Ellen's father, their father, in Duchesne, and they first started out in a little house about half the size of this, and lost that house and lived in a trailer house, and then the guy repossessed the trailer house and left them with no home at all. Then they moved into Murray.
Okay. So
Well, he built a a home there for Fern
Yep, that,
in Duchesne.
right.
And
It was a lovely home for that time of
yeah,
life.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
yeah, when we came out, it was when Isaac was little.
Okay, you were in Mexico,
She killed him.
and at what point did they call and? No, it wasn't you. It was Ellen's mother. Bill's
Thelma?
pardon.
Thelma.
Thelma?
Yeah. Anyway, Jean.
Oh, Jean, that
Jean
was
was
my
in
sister.
Mexico.
Jean was my sister. Bill's sister.
Well, so are you.
Yes.
But at what point there, because I'm not familiar with it, evidently Fern was married to Bill at the time, or was it before Bill married, that Jean came from out of Mexico to live with you?
Well, it was while we were there at Duchesne. Tommy was the baby.
Wow.
So,
Wow. So she had Tracy and Athy and Tommy, three children when Jean came.
yeah, when she came back out of Mexico.
And Bill was living with Marty somewhere in a little tiny apartment when Jean came with her 5 kids. So Fern had 3 and Jean had 5, and there was Martin. And was you married to him at that time?
Yes,
All in this little tiny apartment.
well, we were living in,
Then he rented a great big house.
well, it was big, but it didn't have much rooms in it.
No, more
We were
space.
living in Torrey.
Tory.
They were working on the road, Bill and Martin was working on the road there, and for Strong and Company, and Jean called us from Minersville. Is that where it is?
I don't know. I wasn't around.
Fillmore.
Well,
If I remember, it was
well, where
Fillmore.
Walter was.
Oh yeah, Minersville.
Minersville.
Yep.
And so we went to, we took the pickup and went to get her and her kids. Well, she got a ride, so she'd got home before we got back.
So why did she call? What was the situation that she?
Well, she'd left Mexico and come out and needed somebody to come pick her up.
So where was her husband?
He was one of the LeBarons,
Okay.
But he was a cousin.
Okay.
but the humane, not the humane, the government people who help people, social
Yeah.
Social
services.
services.
Humanitarian? Is that the word you're looking for?
Social services called Bill and said, Jean's here and she says that you'd accept her if we brought her into the States, and will you? He says, yeah, okay, come and get her.
Okay, so we brought up LeBarons. I've got a story there that I want to see if we can all clarify. I remember Dad telling me at one point that at the time of Ervil's death in prison, when they searched his jail cell, they found what was called the 8-man hit list,
Oh my goodness.
which was a list of 8 more people that he had intended to murder, and Dad's name was one of the names on that list.
Yeah.
And the reason being
And
was he
Martin,
chased
too.
Martin was also.
yeah, Dad and Martin, because they had chased one of Ervil's daughters out of New Mexico with a double-bladed axe. Threatening to chop,
Not quite. That part's not
chased
true.
him out of New Mexico with a double-bladed axe, threatening to cut his head off because he had showed up saying that he had had revelation that he was supposed to marry one of Dad's sisters. That's the story that I remember Dad saying of how he got on that hit list. Does anybody remember or know?
I didn't realize this hit list. I never heard of that.
Yeah, In fact, that was the first thing that came to my mind when he told me that he just bought a backhoe.
Backhoe, yeah, I bought a backhoe.
Backhoe from that guy's
One of David Jordan's grandsons.
grandkids.
And David Jordan was,
Who's David Jordan?
he was the one who actually
He did the murders.
murdered.
Okay, he was one of the hitmen.
Yes.
Okay,
He
okay.
was the hitman.
He was the hitman, okay.
You know, most of that.
for most of them, yep.
Okay. But do you know why Dad and Martin were on that list? Do we know, or?
I don't know why Martin was.
Well, probably because they knew too
And didn't agree with them.
much and didn't agree with him. Yeah.
Well, Bill had gone over, for some reason or other, they decided that they were supposed to marry Bill's sister. You?
Well, yeah,
Yes,
Herbal
I
claimed
was supposed to have been Herbal's
Herbal's.
second.
Okay.
Yes.
No,
And
first
Bill
one.
Bill
Second
said,
one.
no way. He picked up the double-bitted axe. He says, go ahead. If you think you're going to get here, I'll
Okay,
take care of
yeah.
you before you even get near her. So
Yes.
he was a Danite and a bad guy, and they were going to get him.
But she was already married to my dad.
Yeah.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
So that's why Dad was probably on
Yeah.
the hit list.
Yeah,
So-
it was like,
That's why.
bring it on, let's go.
Yeah, she was already married.
Yeah.
I had no idea that.
Yeah,
Grandpa got a few horses out of it, and so it was a done deal.
there you go. I don't remember where I actually found that doing my own research and asked Dad about it.
Oh my
When I
goodness.
found about the hit list, and I'm like, do you know anything about that? And he's like, well, my name was actually on it. And I'm like, wait, what? That's
Wow.
wild.
Verlin LeBaron wrote a book, and in that book it has a list of the people that were on that hit list.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
No, Verlin LeBaron was one of the brothers,
Okay.
one of Virgil's
And he
That
was-
name sounds
and he
familiar,
was-
but-
And he was married to
Aunt Lucy,
Dad's
Lucy.
sister.
Now, was Verlin, who was part of the Hitman group, or just
No.
to
No,
put just
he was one
No,
of the
he
ones
was the
brought
prophet.
after.
He
They
was
were
the
after.
prophet.
out after him? Okay,
After Joel.
gotcha.
And he was supposed to be taken out during Dr. Allred's funeral, right?
That's where the name sounds
Somewhere-
familiar.
Somewhere
somewhere
around
around
that.
there.
Yes,
They
it was.
could
It was
get
a
him.
setup assassination that went bad or something. That's
Verlin and Dr. Allred were very close.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason they took Dr. Allred out, is to get Berlin to his funeral, and then to take
Oh
that.
my goodness.
That does sound. Yeah, that does sound right.
But yeah, that book that we've got the book.
What is that? What the girl that did the murders put out?
she was one of the
You're
younger
talking
wives.
about the
that
book.
was-
Is that?
Well, there's
Oh.
another one. One of Herbal's daughters wrote a book also.
Yeah,
Oh.
but that one's horrible, so I've heard.
But,
They did a documentary series, not a series,
Evil
but they did
Herbal?
the Prophet of
The
Evil.
Avenging Angel. Yeah,
I haven't seen that
Avenging
one.
Angel
I
was-
saw the Prophet of Evil with what's his name, actor guy that played that
I
one.
think your father has that in all those videos.
He
that
probably
used to
did.
have.
All right.
Well, that's interesting. I learned a little bit.
So, man, that really just
So
that
Wanda,
really gets my mind turning because
didn't,
He was
didn't
down
Bill
there with the LeBarons and all mixed up with them quite a bit.
didn't Bill live with you guys there at bottom of the Black Ridge too,
Yes.
or
In Leeds?
In Leeds,
Yes.
Yeah.
in that little trailer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Fern lived there in a little house, and that's when I started dating Bill.
Okay.
so okay,
But you had 2 kids then, right, or 3? Carl was the
Edith
baby.
was the
Oh,
baby.
Edith was the baby.
At Leeds, Edith was the baby.
okay. Dad, from my experience with Dad, growing up and watching him and learning from him, Dad had a way of always being. Are you familiar with like the Alexander Hamilton phrase, in the room where it happens? Like the
Mhm.
whole. Dad was always in the room where things happen.
Mhm.
Hmm.
How did he get to that status? Where did he come from that gained him that favor everywhere he went, that everyone trusted him and talked to him? But he did. He exposed himself, and he had knowledge that made him a threat and had his life out for him. He put himself into a position which very likely was his marriage to you, and in your position of being the daughter of the prophet, but Owen and whatever. But he put himself into the position where he was called to be one of the founding fathers, if you will, of Granite Ranch. And so then, you know, he put his whole time and legacy into that. And where I'm going with this, and the dynamic that is blowing me away the more and more I learn, is as far back as I can go, all the way to 1635, when our ancestors first set foot on